Hi everyone. So I want to leave you a message as I walk. It's been a busy weekend, a great weekend, but busy. I did, for those of you who listened to my video yesterday, I talked a little bit about my birthday celebration that I was going to have, and that happened last night, and it was so lovely. It was about 12 of us all together in this beautiful, delicious Indian restaurant that they have here in Mexico, and with my delicious gluten-free vegan lavender cardamom cake. And I also had little gift bags with crystals for every person, and it was just such a lovely time. And it was, I think, the first time I've done that here in Mexico. Like, Greg and I have celebrated, of course, our birthdays here, just him and I, but we haven't, because we didn't have friends when we arrived. It was a whole new city to us, so it felt like a big milestone. Greg's also gonna go back to chemo tomorrow, so for those of you who don't know, my husband Greg was diagnosed with cancer last October. It's a big shock. I mean, really, for many reasons. He wasn't sick, he wasn't feeling ill, and he's always been so healthy. So anyway, it's a whole long year of recovery, and we thought we were done for some time because he had 4 months of chemotherapy, then he did a stem cell transplant. He's been recovering from that, but then for various reasons that I don't need to go into, the doctor really recommended that he do 2 more rounds of chemo, meaning 2 more months. So that's what we're gonna start tomorrow. I'll share more about that, not specifically around cancer, but just how do we manage our mind and emotions when difficult things happen, right? Hola, sí, gracias. But that's not what this video is about. Today I wanted to talk about how I'm inspired because I just wrote my Monday medicine email that's gonna go out in my newsletter tomorrow. So I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek, or actually an added story that's not in there. So what I was thinking about, what it made me think about, was how some of you know my story, but just in case you don't, or you've forgotten, 15 years ago now, I was a middle school teacher in Chicago, and I was led at a point where it didn't logically make sense to leave that career, right? I'd been teaching for 10 years at that point. I had all of these amazing things were happening that were, I'd been awarded this prestigious teaching award. I had, there's all this, it's very dusty right now. There was all this dust coming towards me. And I was being invited to speak at colleges of education. Anyway, there was a lot going on. And I was guided at that point where it made no logical sense, meaning guided by my soul, to leave my career as a teacher for something that was completely unknown. I won't go into all the details. The point of the story is this. So then I wrote a book several years after that called Answering Your Inner Calling. And when I went around talking about the book, doing book talks, often, because I shared that story in my book, how I was teaching and it was the height of my career, and my soul guided me to leave my job as a teacher for something so unknown. And I would often get a question of like, well, how did you do that? How did you have the courage to do that? There's no way I could do that. I don't even want to hear if my soul is telling me to quit my job and start something new. And I would always say 2 things. First, I don't think, in general, I really don't think that's usually the guidance from our soul. For me it was, but it makes sense because I was going to end up becoming a spiritual career coach. It was part of the molding, right, of who I was. It was like preparing me for the work I was supposed to do. So that's one. So it doesn't, because I realized that I was telling that story as inspiration, but some people were hearing it and like either getting scared that their soul was going to tell them to do something they didn't want to do, or just feeling like I was some sort of unicorn and you know, that expression, right? That I was special somehow. I could do that, but they couldn't. That was the last thing I wanted them to think. But the other thing that I also, as I thought about it, I was like, I realized that step seems, I'm sorry, the lighting I know is kind of weird. That step seems really big, right? And it was really big to leave my established career. But the reason I was able to, first of all, hear my soul saying that, then follow its guidance, is because I took a lot of little steps before then. I took a lot of little steps that in the moment might have not seemed that important. They don't seem flashy, they don't seem glamorous, but they are actually where transformation happens. So like a year before I realized that my soul was guiding me to leave my career, I had started to go to a yoga class. And I know that might not seem like the most radical thing ever, but for me it was. Because I was back then, you know, I was a middle school teacher, had 5 kids. If you are a teacher or know a teacher, you're so busy when you're a teacher. So committing to like, I think it was, and it wasn't like I went every day by any means, but I was going at least every Wednesday or trying to go to like a class on Wednesday. But to have the courage to leave school at the end of the day, because teachers always have so much to do, to drive really far because this yoga studio was not close to me in the city of Chicago where traffic is brutal. That was a really big step. And so it was a little step, right? It doesn't seem that big, but it was one of those big steps. And I was able to commit to that because before that I had started to meditate. I had started to really, take time every morning to, even though I didn't know how to meditate, I didn't know what to do, I just was like, I'm sitting on the cushion and I'm just going to be here receiving. And that was because I was like, meditation I know will help me. And it can't be hard. It can't be complicated. Why would our soul make meditation? Because I really believed even then that meditation was a way to speak to our soul, to receive from our soul. So I was like, why would our soul make it complicated? It can't. It must be simple. And so you see, it was those little steps, right? Waking up earlier in the morning. Those things that don't seem glamorous. They just seem like, wait, how is that going to lead me to share my unique gifts, share my medicine with the world, be an inspiration? Like, how is that helping? But it was those little steps. It's those little steps that your brain is going to argue are not important. And so that was the little message I want to give you. You know, if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, subscribe, because I'm sending the email yesterday. It'll go into more detail. I'll kind of share some examples of how I help my clients with that, and then share 2 questions that will help anchor it, that you can ask yourself. And I invite you to ask yourself every day this week, every day forever, like, to help you bypass the brain's programming and conditioning that wants to actually keep you the same. And so I think that's the teaching for today. Thank you so much for being here. I think there's 2 more days and I'll be done with the 30 days in a row journey that I've been on. Thank you so much for those of you who are already in my orbit and have been watching all of these, some of these, and thank you new people who've reached out and found this. Like, it's so exciting. And of course, after the 30 days, I'm still going to be sharing and still going to be teaching and all the things. It just won't be every single day, probably, unless I decide that's what I want to do. I don't know. Okay, I'm sending you so much love, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.